Hello, I said I was gonna do a Bloodborne video, but I'm currently more motivated to do a video on Don't Starve, which, spoilers, also has a bit of Eldritch to it, so, and in case you haven't noticed, yes, I am a fan of Eldritch-related matters. Let's jump into a cover of Don't Starve's story and what I know about it. Or guess. First, we have probably some of the older events, and a bit of guesswork from me and other theorists. Long ago, in a place called the Constant, there lived an ancient civilization of bug people who worshipped the moon, a being known as Alter, or, if I remember, Lumen, as he would be known by other forces. If you don't mind me. Now, the ancients themselves eventually were forced underground as due to situations on the surface, lack of resources and all that, out of the influence of the very god they worshipped. However, they did try and find a way to re-establish a connection. For this, they constructed the ancient archives, a place where they could research into the power of the moon and, well, like I said, re-establish a connection. In that, they did. I believe they built the ancient gateway, a structure in the world of Don't Starve, specifically the game Don't Starve Together. With this complete, they were able to re-establish the connection. However, not only did they gain access to the power of Alter, their god, but also of something else. A being that, according to the heralds, is named Tenebrow, though also known as Shrouden to the ancients. With this, their problems of food scarcity and other issues were all solved. The rise of the shadow usage became their own power and increased the one who wielded it the most, the king, while the worshippers of Lumen, which were led by the queen, whose name we do have, Metheus, began to decline. With this increase of dark use of nightmare fuel, although would come disastrous consequences. Metheus seemed to have known this, and so, in the ruins of part of the ancient archive, she had 3 people construct the sanctum. This is where, now I say, this is after discovery because of what they're talking about. While the intro was more or less about worshipping Alter, the moon god, the sanctum had written words about beware of the dark, beware of the other. Forgive me for my confusion. I should have arranged this better. The had mentions of an accursed keystone, and that it should never leave the sanctum, which is where we find the keystone needed from the recent update. My guess is the people who built the sanctum were opposed to the use of nightmare fuel and the being Shrouden, or Tenebrow, as it has many names after all. They basically built a place to hide the keystone. However, by the time they did, it might have been too late. The forces of darkness rampaged, and the entire civilization collapsed. Mephius gave her life to stop the shadows, leaving the king alone in the ruins. Now, for their fates, Mephius became a being of shadow, just like the rest of the civilization. Now she seems to be working to bring about the return of Tenebrow, but why? Whether it's of her own free will or not, or what motivates her, we're not sure. It could be an attempt to resurrect the species, in a similar way that the heralds can continue to exist as nothing more than masks. But this is mere speculation. Now, we cut to our world where a man named William Carter gets his hands on the Codex Umbra. A stage magician with less appeal. With not a lot going for him. With the Codex Umbra, I think of Umbra? Yeah. With the Codex Umbra, he's able to actually cast real magic, and William Carter, as shown in it, which is displayed in a train crash, his use. He ends up putting on the stage name Maxwell, and using the Codex Umbra's power for his own experiments. However, this attracted the attention of the shadows. What's left of the ancient civilization, now that they've been turned into nothing but living shadows. Their objective? Well, their king is gone, and so is their queen. She is missing. So they need someone to rule them, someone to sit on the throne again. And thus, they target Maxwell. Oh, I should have pulled it up. I will be reading some quotes off of the wiki, which information may or may not be correct. Alright. Anyway, Maxwell ends up getting pulled into the shadows. Sorry about the break. I'll cut it out, I guess. Gets pulled into the shadows where and it's made the throne. So is his assistant, Charlie. Which we'll get to her later. However, a film that recorded the whole event became infused with shadow magic. When a certain thieving former snake oil salesman named Wagstaff gets his hands on the projector, it allows him to examine the constant. We'll get back to it. We'll also come back to this later. Now, in the constant, through the ethereal puzzles, as I believe they're called, let me double check that. I will be pulling up a lot of information due to me not really doing a whole lot of pre-research, which I probably should have done. Oh, sorry, the Expectimus puzzles. Again, we'll get back to that later. Well, actually, maybe we should cover it now. From what we could tell from the Expectimus puzzles, Wagstaff had managed to make a name for himself with his technology. Despite his research into the constant, it doesn't seem like a whole lot's going on. Anyway, however, his machine to teleport himself to his partner, which would become WX later on, goes wrong. Kicks the portal, which gets it to finally work, and it's but catches the whole factory on fire in the process. He eventually gets pulled into it, and Winona comes along to help, who's investigating the disappearance of her sister along with a lot of other people. Anyway, she ends up rebuilding it, and hey, Charlie appears. However, she's been fused with some kind of shadow monster. Sorry. Ends up pulling her into the constant. We'll get to this. She'll pop up later, but for now, we move on. The defected bring out only a select few radios ever made it out. Now, from here, I'm going to make a guess of something. And all centers down to Wilson. Now, Wilson seems to be one of the last people to ever disappear into the constant. However, I'm not... However, his influence might be pretty drastic. Because it seems that he is... Well, time works weird in the constant. So for Maxwell, his first interaction with people might have been, in fact, Wilson, but it might... However, in our world, he has interacted with multiple people by this point. We don't know. And why do I say this? It's because of what Maxwell asks him. Basically, he offers forbidden knowledge to Wilson in the form of a machine, and wants him to build it. For others, he doesn't need to do this kind of thing, so why make Wilson build a machine? Like I said, time's funny and a constant. It's entirely possible that he needs Wilson to build a machine to act as a way to strengthen his connection to our world already. Not to mention the influence of shadows. When Wilson builds the machine, Maxwell's connection is strengthened even further. It's strengthened enough that he ends up pulling Wilson in. And with this, he begins popping up. His influence begins to appear across multiple eras in time. Manipulating things in order to get situations he wants. For example, the fire that burned down Wickerbottom's library was seemingly caused by the arsonist of Don't Starve. Willow. Many of these people have somehow have a connection to him. He has pretty offered all of them one thing or another. Though, why even do it? Well, partly for entertainment, and partly because he may want himself off the Nightmare Throne. After all, anyone on it is stuck there permanently until someone takes their place. Could be an attempt. So he could have just brought people in for his own amusement or to take his place. We're not sure which. Though... Anyway. Apologies for the delay. Anyway, to sum it up, a bunch of characters get pulled in at different points in time. We start out as Wilson, and during the events of Don't Starve, make our way through to survive, and end up reaching Maxwell on the Nightmare Throne. Which Wilson may or may not have been the one who influenced the world for the Reign of Giants DLC, but that's another story. Not to mention Shipwreck and Hamlet, but again, honestly, go check some other people who ask about the Hamlet and the Harbinger, because I'm not covering that here. All this is to say, he might eventually... Eventually, Wilson meets up with Charlie, who arrives at the Nightmare Throne. The Nightmare have ends up attacking him, and her human side eventually chucks her out of the game. They then get into a bicker about how it should be arranged until eventually they somehow fuse together into the new queen of the constant. Oh, I should also bring up Maxwell's speech before we get too far ahead ourselves into Don't Starve Together. For it, as we arrive, he's bound to the throne, as I mentioned. I'll go ahead and read it out for you. Is this what you were expecting? Is this how it ends? Forgive me if I don't get up. You've been an interesting plaything, but I've grown tired of this game. Or maybe they've grown tired of me. Heh, took them long enough. They'll show you terrible, beautiful things. It's best not to fight him. There wasn't much here when I showed up. Just dust. And the void. And then. I've learned so much since then. I've built so much. But even a king is bound to the board. Can't change the rules of the game. I don't know what they want. They just watch. Unless you get too close. Then, well, there's a reason I stay so dapper. What year is it out there? Time moves differently here. Go on, stay a while. Keep us company. Or put the key in the box. It's your decision. Either way, you're just delaying the inevitable. Reality's like this sometimes. I think I've said enough. Anyway. It's... Just to be clear, there's another group called Them that's brought up, but I don't think they were in Klei's mind, the creative team behind Don't Starve Together's mind, back this. Yeah. Most likely, he's referencing the shadows, the beings themselves. The ancient bug civilization now warped by the fuel and the influence of the new ruler. Anyway, he also mentioned some other things, like in reference to the ruins, probably the knowledge given to him by the very ancients, the nightmares themselves. And mentions other things. Anyway. Wilson ends up getting booted off throne by Charlie, like I mentioned, and we get to the events of Don't Starve Together, where Maxwell and Wilson end up building a gate to connect their worlds. But eventually it's seized by our French, the Queen Charlie, after it brings everyone together. And thus, Don't Starve Together begins. Our group of adventurers just trying to survive in nature, but get caught up in something bigger. As they venture through the ruins, they may come across the atrium and the ancient key after defeating the Guardian. Putting it in does nothing except lock the world, the underground nightmare power thing. I forgot what it's called. Forgive me. At its max stage. However, upon getting what looks like a heart of sorts, and putting it in the skeleton, then turning it on, you awaken the ancient Fuel Weaver. This being is the object put into the skeleton was the vessel for the Fuel Weaver, for the king's soul, and he's trying to shut the gate off to prevent the return of Tenebrow or Shroudin, as his names are. A being from beyond the constant, whose influence spread into it thanks to the ancient gateway. As far as we can tell. Anyway, With this, a mysterious beckoning hand will appear. For now, without the right materials, we cannot do anything. But, once again, forgive me. If provided Dreadstone, well, something interesting happens. It allows the ancient gateway, which originally did not exist, and it allows the ancient gateway, which when we find it is in a disrepaired state, and allows it to be fixed. It exists in the cracked pillars of a nightmare werepig. Pillars of the nightmare werepig that binds it. Outcrop. Alright. Right. The Dreadstone will then allow the opening of Shadow Rifts, where more Dreadstone can pop up from. However, why the... Here? Well, anyway. Now, for that one set of events that becomes significant, the other... Well, you'll have to assist a certain cryptic founder in order to actually to increase the power of the alternate side of things. For Alta's power, thanks to the cryptic founder, will allow it to begin. Extract Night Shard. The Lunar Rift. And to sum it up, these are a result of storms appear. Again, forgive the sort of put together set of things. Anyway, in order to actually begin the quest line and unlock Lunar Rifts, you'll have to go to the Lunar Isle. And the Lunar Altars, specifically. Guessing Moonstorm to appear. Anyway. The Celestial Orb. Anyway, the point is, assisting Wagstaff in his questline to face the Champion Heart's power triggers the Lunar Rifts. And then things start escalating. During the events of which, you get two quest lines, the Shadow Line and Lunar Line. By helping Wagstaff, he's built his Warbot in an attempt to harness the power of the moon. Things go awry. Robot becomes incredibly powerful, though Wagstaff does not care much for it and just asks you to eliminate it. In the end, though, what comes out of its remains, the Celestial Scion, ends up managing to grab him, shown in the Expectimus puzzles, which predate Wilson being taken from our world. Sorry about that, my computer suddenly cut out. And with this, which is kind of how I can guess, things are weird in the constant. Anyway, he's pulled directly into the constant from his projector, which he's been using this entire time, and gets sent somewhere. We have no idea where he's been sent to, but he's been sent somewhere. As for us, the Shadow Rift questline, we must enter the Sanctum, the very vault where the cursed the keystone is held. Charlie needs this in order to fully bring about Tenebrow into the realm of the Constant. However, it's heavily guarded, so good luck. Once you bring the keystone, well, nothing happens yet, as this is merely half of the story. First half of the cursed confrontation. The second half will come later. So we can only wait for now for the resolution of that storyline. And of course, we're left with questions like what happened to Wagstaff for the Lunar questline. Indeed, what circumstances will happen? And then we have Dunstarve Elsewhere, the upcoming game. I'm thinking our guys end up catching the attention of both Alter and Tenebrow, of Lumen and Shrouded, as they're also called. And, well, they kind of have to flee. In the end, ending up somewhere else. I honestly hope that the game introduces stuff like from Hamlet, going with its gothic style we've seen so far. As it would be interesting to see content from like Hamlet and Shipwrecked brought back with a lot more than just like a few characters and items, but like the mobs and the biomes, stuff like that. That's just my personal hope, and I'm definitely gonna edit this video. Anyway, that's it for me, and catch you on the flip side.